Welcome all, welcome to this lecture of Advanced Java Programming. Today we'll be starting with Unit 3, Servlet API and Overview. Let me show the disclaimer first, then we'll start with the actual session. Okay, so let's start the session now. And today we'll be starting with Servlet programming. Okay, Unit 3. So if you see in Servlet, if you see the syllabus, then you will get to see that in your syllabus there are lots of things about Servlet, like Servlet model, overview, Servlet lifecycle, HTTP methods, structure, and lots of other things are there, right? So let me focus on the theory first, then we'll start with the practicals. So see, in the early days, what used to happen is basically the web servers used to deliver static contents, right, as per the user request. But now, nowadays, there are dynamic content is in very much in demand. Okay, each and every site provides you with dynamic content. So basically, Java servlets typically run on the HTTP protocol, and this HTTP protocol is used by most of the web servers. Okay, and that's why we will be focusing on how this HTTP protocol works, and then how can we create dynamic websites using this HTTP protocol. Okay, that's what we'll be focusing on. Okay, so basically, what is HTTP? HTTP is a request response protocol. Okay, so it is something like this. There is a client and there is a server. The client sends a request and server will do some processing and will send a reply. This is how the HTTP protocol, that is hypertext transfer protocol, works. What is it? It is a request response based protocol. Okay, where what happens is client sends a request message to the server and server returns a response message. This is how it happens. Okay, now this request message can contain lots of other things like data, right, and the information about browser or the machine from which the request has originated, and reply from the server can also contain lots of things, like it can be a file, it can be some web page, it can be some output, right? So now in this from this unit you will see that the way you people used to run Java programs will totally change. How did we used to run Java programs till now? Till now, in as if you use in core Java, then you used to do what? You used to compile the program, like say using Java C and hello world program, hello world.java program, right? And then how do you used to run it? You used to run by Java command, Java hello world, right? This is the class name that you provide, right? So this was used to compile for it was used for compiling, and this was used for running, okay, or executing, we can say, right? Now this will not be the case. Here you will obviously compile it like this, okay, but you will need lots of other jar files in the class path. So for that we will be making use of IDE, so that IDE takes care of all those things, okay. And uh, and also uh, we do not run it like this, because if we run it like this, then it will be running it through console and the output will be given to console only. But here the output is needed on the client side, which is nothing but mostly a web browser. So whatever you want to display or you want to print, that will be printed over here onto the browser. And this will go through, this request and response will go through a network. What is this? It's a network. Okay, it can be an internet, it can be a LAN, or it can be any network. Okay, it can be a same machine also. This client and server can be on the same machine also. That's also fine, no issue in that. Okay, so the way of running this program, that is this particular part, will totally change in case of advanced Java. This is not the way you will be running the programs. Okay, you will have to load the server, you will have to start the server will load that particular program into memory, and then you, as from client, you will have to send the request to that particular page, and then that page will reply through the server, and then there you will get some output. This is the whole process that happens. Okay, and for that, the main carrier for that is the HTTP protocol. HTTP packet is the main carrier for all this request response data. Okay, so basically our servlets are what? Server side programs. Okay, that basically run inside a web server and handle client's request. Okay, and it can return a customized or a dynamic response for each request. For each request there can be a different response. Okay, and for that you don't need to change the program, it will automatically do that. Okay, so but the first question comes to mind is why we will build web pages dynamically, right? The web page is basically, the web page is based on data submitted by the users. Mostly in most of the cases, many times web page depends on the data submitted by user. For example, if you are buying online, then your shopping cart will be as per the items that you have selected, not as per uh, the company's policy, right? It will be as per the items that you would have selected and put in your shopping cart. According to that, your shopping cart should look like, right? So mostly the web pages are based on the data submitted by the user. Right? For example, it can be result page from search engine. If you are searching something, then you should get result for that particular search text only, not for any other text, right? Then order confirmation pages on online stores, etc., etc. All these are the examples of dynamic web pages. Okay, and basically web pages are made from data that changes frequently. For example, a weather report or a news headline page, these will be continuously changing. It will be changing in a fraction of seconds. Okay, so those kind of to represent these kind of data which are very frequently changing, or to represent those kind of data or those kind of pages which are defined by the user's request or user's choice, we need to build the pages dynamically, right? And that's why we need servlets and JSPs which can be programmed to run dynamically and give dynamic output according to users input. So basically, web page uses information from databases or other server-side sources, right? For example, an e-commerce site is there, and it could use to Servlet to build a web page that lists the current price and availability of each item that is for sale. So you'll be picking up each item one by one, some items, and then you'll be constructing your shopping cart, and then you will be processing the order for it, right? So all those things will need databases in order to database transactions, to do the database transactions. So basically, Java Servlet is the foundation of Java server-side technology. From here, the server-side programming approach or enterprise level approach of Java started. Then came JSP, that is Java Server Pages, which is nothing but an extension of servlets only. Then JSF, Java Server Faces. Then there are some other combination of various APIs which turn out to be, which come out to be as the frameworks, big frameworks, collection of lots of classes and all for some specific purposes. Those are called as frameworks. So here struts, Spring, Hibernate, these are various, these are all this JSF, these struts and Spring and Hibernate, these are all various frameworks. What are these? These are various Java based frameworks. And the main thing is, if you want to make your career into industry, then you should be knowing at least some of these frameworks. Okay, if you want to make your career in Java into the industry, you should be having hands-on knowledge of this, some of this framework, specifically the Hibernate, struts, Spring and all. Okay, which are, what are these? These are frameworks and are also extension of servlet technology. Are also extension of servlet technology. Now see, there were applets. Before there were applets, but if once the big applet started growing bigger, it would require long download time. And the main thing is applets do not have access to all the system resources. It cannot access the files on the client side systems. Okay, so server side Java solves lots of problems that applets face. Right? For example, code executed on the server side and only results sent to the client. So that applets being bigger in size, that problem is get solved because all the processing is done on the server side and only the results is sent onto the client side. Right? Then servlets can access applications and data sources also. So uh, once a client sends a request to a server, the client sends a request to server, what can server do is server can access basically the databases. Okay, server can specifically access the databases. What is this? That's a database. Okay, so server can specifically access the database and can get some data. So client requests some data from server and server sees that, okay, I need database connectivity. So it connects to the database, gets some data and does some processing and then replies to the client. The client gets to see the data. You see, this is how server-side Java solves the problem of the applets. Okay, things that are stored in database can be accessed by the server-side programs. Okay, and clients get to see the result. So client does not directly get to access the database. That's the best part. Okay. So servlets basically are also extensions of Java enabled servers. Okay, and servlet is a dynamically loaded module. So basically that's it services requests from a web server. Okay, so it's like a client sending a request to any machine. That will not work. No. Client sends a request to a server. Okay, client sends the request to a server, but the server, there will be basically a web server inside the server machine. So let's consider this as to be a server machine. Okay, and then there is a web server inside it. What is there? There is a web server inside it, and inside that web server there is something called as Tomcat container or servlet container, not Tomcat, but servlet container. There is something called as servlet container. Let me just type it smaller. So I'll say servlet container. In the servlet containers, all servlets execute. There can be lots of servlet programs that you might have kept in your applications. Okay, there might be various web applications also. Okay, and what can happen is whenever your request comes from the client, this web server checks to which servlet the request should go, to this one, or maybe to this one, or maybe to this one. Okay, and wherever the request goes, okay, it does the processing, and then that particular servlet responds. Okay, that particular servlet responds to the client. That's what happens. Okay, so you see there is a server machine. Now see, the server and client machine can be same. These two can be a same machine, or it can be different, located on apart from each other through and communicating with each other through the network. This network can be local network or internet or anything. Okay, any specific network like that. So the client is using browser to access. Here he puts the address, right? Let's say, for example, www.abc.com, right? And then it sends a request to the server. Server checks that the request is coming from this web server. It checks that the request is coming for servlets that are contained inside servlet container. So it checks that servlet, for this particular servlet the request is coming. So it sends the request to that servlet. That servlet executes and responds. Okay, that's what happens. And all this servlets get executed in the JVM only. So that's why Java is secure, because all Java program runs inside JVM only. Okay, and now this JVM is running on the server side. Okay, as a part of this servlet container, right? So because the servlet is running on the server side, it does not depend on browser compatibility. So you may be using any browser. Any browser may be used by the client, right? And the request may be sent to the server. Okay, that's the main part. So now, what is the servlet's job? Why do we use servlets? What is the aim of using the servlet? Right? What can a servlet do? So servlet basically can process form data. It can read the data sent by the client. So for example, for purposes like registrations, we use forms. For purposes like order processing or let's say purchasing, we use forms, right? And there are lots of other things for which we can use forms. So all those data that is sent by the client or the end user to the server can be processed by the servlet. That's the servlet's job. Okay. Then you have this, and you also have this request headers. Servlet can access request headers. That is the data sent by the client in the request. So through this request headers, the server will come to know what kind of client is being used by the user, what kind of browser is being used, what are its properties, etc., etc. Okay. Then it can generate the results. Servlet can generate the results and send the explicit data back to client in the form of HTML, so that the HTML browsers can display HTML in a proper manner. So the data sent by the server is sent to the browser, and browser understands HTML language properly, right? So it can display or render that HTML output easily. And it can even send implicit data to client like status codes, response headers, all those things along with your actual response, right? So see, what happens is servlet gets two types of data. One is the form data that the client sends, another is the request headers. Okay, one is the form data and the request headers, and it does the processing on that, and it can send two types of data back. That is, it can send two types of responses. In response, it can send two things. One is the actual response in the form of HTML code and the status code and response headers. Okay, so remember, whenever the client sends the request, it can have either data, that is form data, and the request headers. These both things can be there. Especially request headers will always be there. Form data might be or might not be there. Whereas when the server sends the response back, okay, then in response it will have obviously an HTML part, that is the body of the response, and status code and response headers. Okay, so that will using the status code and response headers, the browser will come to know what kind of response it is giving. Is this a proper response or there is an error-based response? Okay. So that's a servlet's job, to get the data or get the request and get these kind of request headers and form data in the request and send the response. And in response, it can send status code, response headers, and the data, actual data, or the HTML code. Okay, that's what the servlet's job is, right? So now there have been various, attempts to discuss servlets and CGIs. So Java servlets often basically often serve as the same purpose as of the CGI. CGI was an old technology, and it was used when the servlets came. So servlets had to compete with CGI, right? But servlets offered lots of advantages in compared to CGI. It had got good performance, much better performance than CGI. Second thing is CGI was process based, whereas servlet was thread based because it was running on Java. So, and Java supports multi-threading. So servlets, that's why became popular. Okay, and servlets execute within the address space of a web server. So it is not necessary to create a separate process to handle each request or each client request. So for example, if there is a server, okay, and there is a page, okay, suppose page 1, right, and there are lots of clients sending requests to it. Okay, there are lots of clients sending requests to it. See, lots of clients are sending requests to it, right? So for each request, what it will do is it will have a different thread running on it. It will have a different thread running on it. Same code. Okay, and that is the that is the power of Java, that you don't need a separate process in order to process all these requests. Okay, in order to process all these requests that are coming from different clients. Okay, what it does is it basically runs the same page, but different threads are being run on it. Different threads are being run on it for each request. So in that way, it is very much advantages with respect to CGI. What does CGI do? CGI will execute separate. If it is a CGI, then this page 1, will have to execute separate processes. Say process 1 for request 1, then process 2 for request 2, then process 3 for request 3. In that way, processes will take a lot of time. Whereas this threads thing does not take a lot of time. Okay, so that's because of that the performance gets better. Okay, so for each client request, the CGI creates a new process, whereas for each client request, Servlet creates a new thread only. Okay. Other thing is servlet is platform independent as because they are written in Java, right? And since Java Security Manager is there, since it is always run in Java, Security Manager on the server enforces a set of restrictions to protect the resources on a server machine. So servlets are trusted, and there are the full functionality of Java class libraries are also available to servlet. There are lots of class libraries which can be used by servlet. It can even communicate with applets, databases, or other software via sockets and RMI mechanisms also. Okay, now this you might be seeing now. Sockets you will be seeing now. Jaisar will be taking this particular process part. Okay. Okay. So now we would ask, so what is the use or what is the advantage of using the servlet? Right. So basically there are lots of advantages. One is the efficiency. Okay. It uses lightweight Java threads as opposed to individual processes as well it was done by CGI. So in that case, it is very much efficient. Okay. So if there are, let's say there are thousands of requests coming in from client side, there are thousands of clients requesting at the same time. So what a Java server will have to do for a particular page, if all these requests are coming for a particular single page only, then a servlet, if it's a servlet page, then a server will have to simply create 1,000 threads only. That's it, nothing else. And threads are lightweight, so it takes much less time to create thread and execute it. Okay. Second thing is it is persistent. So persistency. Servlets basically remain in memory until and unless you explicitly don't remove it, like you don't shut down the server or you remove that particular servlet. Up to that part, it remains. So it can maintain state between requests. That's the best part. So if suppose there is a server and there is this client, okay. Suppose this is client 1 and now this is client 2. Okay. Now suppose client 1 is sending some request and client 2 is also sending a request. Let's consider this as uh, this is request 1, then this is request 2. Okay, let's call it as 2, and then what happens is server basically sends the response back, and here also server would have sent the response back. But now what would happen is, suppose this client 1 sends another request which is termed here as R3. Okay, so the server should recognize that this R3 is coming from client 1, which had already sent R1, request 1, before some time. So server should be able to recognize that this R3 is coming from client 1 only, who had already sent request 1. So in order to do that thing, what you require is you require to maintain the state between different requests, and that is possible in servlet using sessions, okay, and cookies. We'll see those things later on. Third thing is portability. Since servlets are written in Java, they are platform independent. You can transfer it from one server to another server. If there is a server that is Linux based and now you want to transfer your application to a server which is Windows based, you can easily transfer your web application, right? You don't need to write that code, separate code for that. Fourth is robustness. Error handling is easily done. Garbage collector is easily done by the server side. Java provides lots of server side APIs, and server which is running has also lots of things like garbage collector thread is running, and error handling can be done easily to prevent problems like with memory leaks or something like that. And there is a very large class library network, like network libraries are there, file libraries are there, database related libraries are there, distributed object components related libraries are there, security related libraries are there, which can be used by our servlets. Okay, so that is these are some of the advantages of using the servlet. Okay. Okay. So now, along with this, there are some other advantages of servlets like extensibility. That is, you can create new subclasses that suit your needs using inheritance and polymorphism. There is security. You can provide security by the server. Security is already provided by server as well as the Java security manager inside the servers that run these servlets. Then it is powerful. Servlets can directly talk to web server. That's the best part. It also facilitates. It also provides us a database connection pooling, session tracking, and lots of other mechanisms are there which makes our applications more powerful. And it is convenient. It easily parses and decodes HTML form data. It reads and it can read and set HTTP headers. It can handle cookies easily. So that's why it is convenient programming. Okay. So see, this is Java servlet architecture. What does it have? There is a browser which uses HTTP protocol. What is HTTP? What is the full form of HTTP? Hyper Text Transfer Protocol. Hypertext Transfer Protocol is used to transfer the HTML pages, which are nothing but the web pages. Okay. So web browser uses HTTP protocol in order to talk to HTTP server, which basically in turn talks with servlet programs, which can in turn talk with databases. So if you send a request to server, server sees which of the particular servlet to send that particular request. If there are multiple servlets available, then it may send to a particular request to that particular servlet. Servlet may access the database and access the information and can then reply back. Okay, servlet can then reply back to the client. Okay, that's what happens. And you see, these are the packages: javax.servlet and javax.servlet.http. Okay, these are the two packages that we will make use of. Okay, so javax.servlet contains generic interfaces and classes. It contains generic servlet, which are not protocol specific. So you can make your own protocol specific servlets also, right? Whereas this javax.servlet.http package contains classes that are extended for creating HTTP specific servlets. So we will be focusing our main work on this part only. We will be focusing our learning to learn this particular HTTP specific servlets only. Okay. So basically, the heart of the servlet architecture is this javax.servlet.servlet interface. This is the servlet interface. That is basically the main thing that is on top of all. Okay, so from servlet only, you get generic servlet and then you get HTTP servlet and all. Okay. And see, there are basically 5 basic methods that are required. Okay, that should be there for each servlet. Init method is there, service method is there, destroy method is there, which are nothing but lifecycle methods. And there are 2 other methods like get servlet config and get servlet info. These also can be implemented by us. Okay. So now there is something, this I just told you that these are lifecycle methods. Now what is a lifecycle basically? Right. See, in Java programming, in the previous in core Java programming, what we used to do, when you say Java and hello world program, so what will happen is this interpreter, Java interpreter will run this Java program, this class, and execute it, and then once that execution happens, the control will come back. Right, that's it. But here what happens is, here the request comes from the client side onto the server side, and the object of the servlet object is loaded into memory. Request gets transferred to it by the web server, and there are lots of methods that may be needed to execute it. So if it's a first request, then you may need to execute init. If it's the last request, then you may need to execute destroy also. Okay. So basically, servlet has a life cycle, which can be defined as the entire process from its creation till destruction. So there are three methods. One is init, another is service, and third is destroy. These three methods are called as life cycle methods. Okay. So whenever a servlet object is loaded into the memory and it is initialized by calling the init method. This is called only once in the life cycle. Similarly, whenever it is terminated, it is this destroy method is called. Destroy method is called. That is also called once in the life cycle. This is called once only. Once only during the start of the life. This is also called once only during the end of the life. And then service method is called to process a client's request. Now there can be lots of clients requesting, right? There can be lots of requests coming from the client. There can be thousands of people flocking your website, right? So there can be lots of requests coming in for service method in order to process a client request, because there are lots of clients. So these will keep on executing. This thing will keep on executing. But this init method and destroy method will run only once. When will this init method run? When the object, the servlet is loaded into the memory. When would the servlet be loaded into memory? Mostly when the server starts and the application gets loaded, or mostly when the first request comes from the client side. At that time, the init runs. And when would this destroy method will be called? When the whole application shuts down or the server shuts down and it garbage collects all the servlet objects. At that time, this destroy method is called. Okay. So finally, the servlet is garbage collected by the garbage collector of the JVM whenever this after this destroy method is called. So this init and destroy methods are called automatically. Service method is also called automatically, right? We don't have to explicitly call it. So we'll see in next session how this lifecycle methods execute and what is the advantage of using the lifecycle methods. Okay, fine. So any doubt in this, you people can ask me. Yes? Any doubt at all? Then please do let me know. Okay. Let me stop the recording. We can have the interaction.